think about leadership and what Ideagen is all about is really the concept of bringing expertise from multiple sectors and from multiple areas together to actually solve big problems. And I'm thrilled to have two incredible individuals and honestly partners kind of in the work that we focus on as a company in addressing climate change, climate adaptation, and specifically around urban heat. So maybe as a start, we'll do a few intros. I'm Jeff Terry. I head up the sustainability and ESG work for GAF. GAF, you may ask, is not GAF. It is in fact GAF, which GAF are not things that should happen or things that shouldn't happen. GAF is very intentionally kind of the largest North American roofing and waterproofing manufacturer in the world. A part of Standard Industries, the largest roofing and waterproofing company in the world. We have a major focus on kind of ensuring that buildings, homes are secure, safe, and waterproof. And why that makes sense from climate, we'll talk a little bit about today.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd love to introduce Jonathan, let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name's Jonathan Parfrey. I'm the CEO of Climate Resolve. We're located in Los Angeles, very active also in Sacramento, trying to win policies that protect Californians from the effects of extreme weather and also try to do our own part in limiting our contributions to this climate crisis. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. And hi, everybody. I'm Kurt Shickman. Right now, I'm a consultant, but up until about 3 weeks ago, I was the Director of Extreme Heat Initiatives at something called the Adrian Arst Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. And then before that, I launched an organization called the Global Cool Cities Alliance, which we launched in 2011, to focus on scaling and rapidly accelerating thermal comfort in our cities. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about today relates to that. Some of it is broader, it's around governance, some of it is around other things, but that's been my work for the last 12, 13 years now.
Yeah, I think an incredible characteristic of leadership is humbleness. And these two individuals here with me, I think, embody that incredibly well. Climate Resolve is one of the most kind of revolutionary conservation-based organization based out of the LA area that has kind of tentacles into so many different aspects of the heat kind of and environmental improvement, climate adaptation space beyond just California. And Kurt honestly was kind of a first partnership where we first met was, you know, when he was leading the Global Cool Cities Alliance and the realization of work that was being done and focusing on bringing kind of 1 million, kind of correct me if I'm wrong on this, 1 million cool roofs to the world, focused significantly in the global south. So these two gentlemen are very good friends, are incredible partners, and I would argue are some of the best leaders when we're thinking about what needs to be done in the space of urban heat. So why is a roofing manufacturer here talking about kind of climate adaptation and heat, and urban heat specifically, or extreme heat? Well, because if you take a snapshot from space and you look down into urban environments, peri-urban, what do you see? You see roads and you see roofs. And there's a lot of great solutions out there to really focus on addressing heat and addressing climate adaptation, but we can't forget about the hard surfaces. We make many of those hard surfaces and have an opportunity to influence a lot of those hard surfaces. So that's why we're focused a lot on heat as a company. Now, nearly 40% of carbon that is in our atmosphere globally also comes from the built environment, comes from existing buildings that are operating in the ways. One of the major implications and ramifications of that is the fact that in urban centers like where we're sitting today, kind of that shows up in, according to the US EPA, average temperatures of roughly 7 to 10 degrees hotter in urban centers than they do in rural areas. That's significant because what happens is this heat gets trapped and it doesn't escape, and there's public health implications associated with that. So we're going to talk a little bit about this issue today. I'm excited to bring a topic around directly related to climate to the Global Goals Summit here today, and we'll talk a little bit about this. So where's this relevant when it comes to UN SDGs? It actually is across all 17 goals. There are specific components, and when we look at the goals, it's not just these 17 goals. It's the actual targets and indicators, 169 of which that will actually help us determine if we've made progress towards these goals. A couple I want to read to you. So, Goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Develop quality, reliable, sustainable, and resilient infrastructure, including regions and transborder infrastructure, to support economic development and human well-being with a focus on affordable and equitable access for all. Heat has a direct implication on that. When you look at sustainable cities and communities, kind of target or indicator 6, by 2030, reduce the adverse per capita environmental impacts of cities, including paying attention to air quality and municipal and other waste management. And then lastly, Goal 13, climate action. Integrate climate change measures into national policy strategies. I would argue to say that's local, statewide, regional strategies and planning. And then improve education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change, mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning. So this gets into the very specific focus of this work. So Kurt, can you lead us off and talk a little bit more about what the heck this issue of urban heat is, extreme heat is, and what the impacts are from a global, from a national perspective?
Sure. I mean, so first of all, I think the thing with heat, the curse of working on heat is that you sit in rooms like this and everyone that's talking, you think, oh, I know how heat is affecting that or how heat resilience might improve that situation. Because it really is an issue or a driver that touches every human system, every urban system, and every system that feeds into that urban system. So whether we're talking about human health, there's impacts from womb to tomb on human health related to heat. There are things around educational attainment, so generational challenges. We know that kids that are learning in hot environments do less well than their exact same peers that aren't in those hot environments. So it gets to almost every little aspect of our lives, and as we start to tease it out, we can really find many different entry points into this issue. From an economic perspective, we often talk about heat as the silent killer. Heat is actually the most deadly natural disaster that we face in the world, and that's both in the developed and the developing world. And we also know that 1.3 billion people today live in conditions that make them extra exposed to the risks of heat. So it's a huge global problem. But the economics piece of this is also a silent one. We know that it affects our ability to move goods through our cities. We know that farmers lose value when their crops aren't delivered or their fish aren't delivered to a market. So you're not just losing the fish themselves, you're losing the economic value of that fish if it sits out in the heat. So there's that piece of it. There's even pieces around worker productivity. So if we look at worker productivity in the US today, $100 billion of economic value is lost just from worker productivity. And just to take it back from the sort of economics of that, that's wages. That's take-home pay. That's $100 billion that's not going to some kid's college fund. We're not putting food on the table. We're not investing in their own community. So these are huge impacts. And when we look at it overseas, we've done some work in cities in South Asia, for example, in Dhaka. When you look more broadly at the impact of heat, it's 8% of the GDP of Dhaka today. In Miami, the county budget of Miami-Dade County is less than the impact of heat on Miami-Dade County today. So these are huge impacts that we don't look at in this way. So I'll maybe stop there in terms of the negative doomsaying of it, because I think the flip side of this is also true, which means when we start to think about this issue and think about resilience, we're not just removing a negative, we're actually creating a more positive growth opportunity. So you mentioned the Million Cool Roofs Challenge, and then I promise I will shut up. I get a little exuberant. But the benefit of that is not just cooler buildings. It's not just safer people. It's new economic opportunities for people in different places. We built this up in Central Africa, in South Asia, in South Africa, and in Latin America. And what we found was that there are many different business plans that get you to providing thermal comfort services, whether that be applying a cool roof, whether that be planting and taking care of trees in a community, which actually makes a big difference because it's easy to plant trees, it's hard to maintain them, and it's expensive to maintain them. So these are economic pathways of uplift that we could be thinking about here. So it's not just removing a negative when we focus on extreme heat, it is actually enabling a much more positive future. So, sorry, I just hate leading off with just the negative when it really leads into, I think, the meat of it, which is that we know what to do and we just need to get out and do it.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. But Jonathan, I'd love your perspective as it relates to LA and California, and kind of how does this issue kind of impact local residents and the communities there?
Well, I have to say that the products that GAF has, both on cool roofs for both residential and commercial, as well as the new products that are a seal that is attached to asphalt streets. Those things are solutions that are here now. And so when people are wondering, it's a really hot day, what can we do about it? There's something you can do about it. You can apply these products on your home if you don't have them already. If you're at a local municipality, the city council can vote to say, we would like to add these products to our local roofs and to our streets as a way of cooling down our communities. And I'll tell you a story about a little neighborhood in Los Angeles. It's called Pacoima. And some of you might know the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles. It's a valley because the Santa Monica Mountains blocks most of the ocean breezes from getting in. And so if you're in Santa Monica, it might be a lovely 75-degree day in Santa Monica. In Pacoima, it's 105, just because the ocean influence is blocked off. And so it might only be 15 miles as the crow flies, but it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit difference. And in California, we have an analysis of what constitutes a disadvantaged community. And that index that we have is called CalEnviroScreen. Forgive me for all the acronyms. But in CalEnviroScreen, the little community of Pacoima ranks as among the most disadvantaged in the entire state. There's not very many trees. The boulevards are quite wide. The housing lots are relatively small. And it's in this area that we identified a neighborhood that would really benefit from these cool pavements. And so we worked with Jeff, and this is where the private sector stepped up and said, we want to help out a community. And then we worked with the local council member. We worked with the street services, the Bureau of Street Services in that neighborhood. We worked with the local community in doing outreach. There's a wonderful community-based organization that did that outreach. We even decided it was incredibly important to test the application of these cool surfaces. Did it actually work? Did it cool down the neighborhood? So researchers were brought in, and we had to do these sort of background temperatures to set the sort of baseline of what this neighborhood looks like before the introduction of the cool pavement. And so we put up weather stations. To put up a weather station, you have to have a relationship with the Bureau of Street Lighting. It's not the Bureau of Street Services, different bureau entirely, and they were rewriting the regulations on what new implements could be added to their poles. When you do things locally, trust me, it gets very complicated, and there are a lot of different relationships that have to happen. But in this instance, we not only did the city streets, we also did a park, a beautiful park with a basketball court where we avoided all the gang colors in the neighborhood. It was a smart thing to do. And then the kids now are going out into these parks and enjoying them more because they got spruced up. It's looking much better. And then there's a neighboring school where we have been able to also add these products to cool down the playgrounds of these schools. Each of those institutions have their own unique bureaucracy. and you have to navigate them. But now I can tell you that well, I shouldn't tell you, you should tell people what are the results of these materials on the pavement of Pacoima.
Yeah, Jonathan, thanks. You know, Pacoima has been an incredible kind of a couple of things. It's been a great learning lab. It's been an opportunity for us to collectively kind of learn together, but at the same time, really approach engagement with the residents of a community to bring a comprehensive approach to really think about addressing heat, the heat dynamic that they have been dealing with for decades, really, in the Pacoima community. And it took great collaboration. You know, we appreciate Global Cool Cities Alliance, we appreciate Climate Resolve for helping to introduce us in the right way and actually build relationships with the residents. The reason why kind of we made sure that the colors we were able to bring into the community to bring safety and beautification as well as cooling to the community was because we had an opportunity on multiple occasions to engage directly with the residents. Yeah. They actually helped to design what they wanted their community to look like.
And a mural, street mural.
And a mural. We brought art into the community as well. Actually, you know, LA is awesome. It's cool because you got murals all over the city. Well, we just happened to bring a mural to the ground and do it in the middle or kind of throughout an entire cul-de-sac. But again, that was informed entirely by the residents of the community. We did kind of package research around this. We did 5 monthly observations over a 24-hour period of time each time. And what we discovered through this was, on average, on sunny days, we saw more than a 10-degree surface level temperature reduction, which isn't insignificant. But even more importantly, we saw more than a 2% Fahrenheit ambient air temperature reduction at about 2 meters. And on extreme hot days, we saw a 3.5 degree reduction. That may not sound like a lot, but it's a lot. And when you look at the implications around roughly, and kind of correct me if I say this wrong, about a 2 degree kind of reduction in air temperature that has implications on public health, especially at night, that's equivalent to more than or roughly a 2.5% decline in hospital visits due to heat stress. So there's direct correlation here around this research. Critically important, we've been able to reduce the urban heat island effect compared to kind of the rural area with in and around Pacoima by between 25 and 50%, you know, through this simple intervention. And I say it's simple, but there's nothing simple about it because it took working collaboratively with so many different organizations, individuals, and agencies within the government that kind of when you approach those conversations with objectives-driven plans, you can get all what you're wanting to accomplish on the table right up front. And I think that's what we did, and that's what allowed for this collaboration to really take place. You know, one of the things we talk a lot about is kind of the scale of reflectivity, and these guys are a heck of a lot better experts than me on it. But you know, albedo is a measure between 0 and 100, essentially. And the higher the number, the more reflective a surface is, or the more reflective whatever kind of it may be is. And you know, we were able to take a typical asphalt road from 0.05 albedo to about 22 to 25 albedo. Our goal is to get to the natural albedo of the Earth, which is about 0.3, 0.33. And you know, so the innovation, the technology continues. We're now kind of moving into phase 2 on what we're doing in Pacoima and bringing cool roof technology into that community as well, so that we can continue to learn and see community cooling benefits associated with this, but even more importantly, taking it to the individual household level now and partnering with residents to say, if we bring this, we've already seen improvement in your community, now can we see it in your home? And that's kind of the learning opportunity. But you know, it's also a pilot. We're also learning. And we also recognize that there is kind of a need for scale. You guys mind talking a little bit about kind of, we know solutions. And here's the thing, it's not just about cool surfaces. it is about green space. It is about trees. It's about natural shade. All of these interventions together can actually amplify kind of the cooling that we've seen through this one kind of research and community-based initiative. But let's talk about scale.
I'll just say one thing. The topic of climate change can be very depressing. And if people truly know the science of what we're facing right now, there is cause for great concern. But what we're talking about should be cause of optimism. There's something in our own power that we can do about it. The thing that is great about these reflective materials, they actually send sunlight back into space. And so the great Earth's energy imbalance that is climate change is being incrementally bettered at the speed of light by sending sunlight back into space. So talk about an amazing co-benefit. You cool down a community and you're actually getting at the heart of the climate problem at the same time. Over to you.
I love it. I mean, just to follow up on that, I mean, we look at the globe, it's about 2% of our land area is cities. If we did these interventions in that 2%, we're talking about the equivalent of turning off 500 coal power plants, or the equivalent of taking about half the world's cars off the road for 20 years. So it's a huge number, and we don't capture it at all, which I guess I'm going to get, maybe that leads me perfectly into some of the opportunities for scale here. I think the first thing is, while there is a lot of technology and there's a lot of innovation that has gone into the types of products that we see today, this actually isn't, in my mind, a technology problem, it's an access problem. So we know the ability to model our cities and to help our urban practitioners make good choices about what to put and where to put it and where to prioritize that work is available. It just needs to be accessible. So the first piece of this is how do we take the good information, the great analytical capabilities we have today that are growing exponentially every day, and get them in the hands of the people that make these decisions. So that's number one. The second piece to me is right to what Jonathan was saying. We have a huge benefit that is not captured in the way we fund and finance and transfer the risk of our investments. Right? Right now, if you look at the balance of climate finance, which by the way isn't a huge number to begin with, but only 7% of climate finance goes to adaptation and resilience. The other 93% goes to mitigation. And that's because it's easier to measure mitigation. We need to have the same types of measurement and granularity around how we value these investments that we have for the mitigation side. If we doubled resilience to just 14%, the amount of additional funding flowing into that space that's beneficial for companies, for communities, and others is tremendous. And that's a completely available opportunity for us. So those would be the two I would really highlight right now, yeah.
That's great. Well, I know we're running short on time here, so maybe kind of as a last word, what would be kind of your recommendation on what needs to be done and where can we go from here?
I'm going to be very predictable here. The private sector is not the enemy. The entrepreneurship, the innovation, the ability to act quickly, the ability to move finance, this is all on the private side. We need it desperately in the fight to protect humanity from extreme weather events, and we need it to get at the core problem on climate change. There is no daylight between my nonprofit and the organization that Jeff's affiliated with. We're working hand in glove, and I've never had a better experience in all of my years of working on social issues. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Kurt, what about you?
Well, I mean, I don't know, that's a great way to end this.
I know, I appreciate it.
No, I mean, I think I would just reiterate something I said earlier, which is that we can look at climate, we can look at heat as this full spectrum challenge or problem and look at all the different ways it hurts us. But I think the other way is also true. And that's really where we need to be focused, is how do we take these negatives and take the things we know what we need to do, we know the technologies that are out there, deploy them and start to talk about those as benefits, as improvements in the way we look at the world and the way we live in the world. So that would be my charge, I guess, from this conversation.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate it. I can't tell you how much I value the partnerships that we've had with both of you and the organizations that you lead and have led and will continue to lead into the future. And I think the last thing that I would share myself is, Kurt touched on this well, climate is a part of everything. Climate change and kind of its implications like heat are at the core and are kind of implicative in other issues that we've been talking about today, whether it's health, the various levels of health, education, productivity. So there is always opportunities to marry and combine collective work. Ideagen is all about collective action and collective impact. And this is what this group really is focused on. We're also ready to step into it with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.